Welcome, lords and ladies, back to the realm. I am the Goat King, and today I'm addressing a video by Nonat1s, published a few months ago. There will be a link to it in the description. In that video, Nonat points out some issues he has with the fighter, suggesting it is both overpowered and limits the design space for other systems in the game. First, Nonat mentions that proficiency is the identity of the 2nd edition fighter.
The fighter has a flat +2 bonus over every other martial class in the game.
And I totally agree that proficiency defines the fighter, as I mentioned in my DPS video. He goes on to say that this isn't a problem in and of itself, rather...
Where the issue creeps in with Pathfinder 2e is the +10, -10 critical hit system. Suddenly, that fighter's +2 to hit is not only more accuracy, but also more critical hit chance.
Nonat suggests here that the fighter will crit significantly more than their fellow marshals, and he sets this as a problem with the class that makes it overpowered. Let's examine that. Using the Game Master Guide's creature creation rules, we can compare the moderate armor class for a creature against the attack bonus of a fully tuned fighter of the same level. We see that at most levels, the fighter will crit twice as often as their other marshals. The actual chance to hit will vary, and if your GM prefers using weaker encounters or more numerous enemies, everyone will crit more often. However, if your GM chooses to send fewer enemies in higher level encounters, everyone, including the fighter, may see their crit chance drop to the base 5%. This shows us that the fighter's proficiency bump isn't an all-around showstopper, even if it does happen to get them crits more often. Furthermore, this proficiency bump loses its edge at 5th level when the fighter is forced to specialize. This specialization locks them into either melee or ranged combat style if they want to keep that +2 on their attacks. Thrown weapons are the exception, however. They come with their own issues. That all being said, 10% more in most fights sure does seem broken, but in my opinion at least, every class sounds broken in a vacuum. Let's compare with the other classes and see what they're capable of. Rogues make up for their lower attack bonuses by being mobile on the battlefield, hiding and flanking to reduce enemy armor class. This also allows them to apply their sneak attack dice and do comparable damage to their fighter fellows. If a fighter is not taking advantage of the flat-footed condition, they will be hitting with the same chance to crit as a rogue who is attempting to get the flat-footed condition on their enemies. And let's not forget the busted number of skills and skill feats rogues will accumulate for both in and outside of combat. Barbarians bulk up with temporary hit points and swing with extra damage. For the Giant Instinct Barbarian, this is 6 extra damage. That's more than an average roll on a D10, and just shy of an average roll on a D12. Monk and Ranger both benefit from better action economy for their attacks. The Monk being a little more tanky with its excellent saves, and the Flurry Ranger subclass seeing reduced multiple attack penalty, putting them on level with the fighter for their 2nd attack, and a much better odds on the 3rd attack. Champions are pillars of reliability in a game with their special reactions and lay on hands and their high armor class. In some way, every martial class is at least a little busted. All this aside, I think Nonat had a bigger issue with the fighter.
On top of that, feats in Pathfinder 2nd edition are drastically different. You're not really gonna find little static bonuses to attack rolls and armor class and saving throws that often. Archetypes cannot give any numeric bonuses to attack rolls, and it's pretty much the fighter's fault.
I think Nonat has a point here, but I don't believe it's an issue with the fighter. Pathfinder 2e has been carefully designed for balance, excluding the gnome flickmace. The system works very hard to ensure a GM can build an encounter with reasonable expectation for how it will play out. For many people, including myself, this is a good thing. But there are those who find it gets in the way of their game. Derek from the Knights of Last Call said the game was so finely balanced it was like a knife edge, which made it difficult to modify. This, I believe, is why feats and archetypes feel limited in that they rarely, if ever, give numerical bonuses. All this together, is the fighter a problem for the system? Theory crafting is useful, but at the end of the day, we have to ask the actual players. I play in a living world server that keeps track of some nerdy data, and if we take a look at what classes the 173 players have chosen, we see that the fighter is indeed overrepresented with 10% of the pie. Most classes sit around 3 to 5%, with some of the lower ones being 2%, and the cleric does follow the fighter, being a pretty large chunk of the pie. While this is significant, I wouldn't call it broken. Even Nonat says the fighter hasn't hurt their games.
Honestly, it hasn't even mattered to my group. We've had a fighter almost every campaign, and we've still had fun with it. But I can't tell you the number of times we've gone, wow, the fighter got a crit? What a surprise!
And he even says taking away this bonus would make them too weak.
And you can't knock the fighter down to trained along with everyone else, otherwise he's just worse than every other class in the game.
So what is it then? The fighter is likely a little stronger than other martial classes, and I could see rare situations where it could be used to hurt the game, but they do seem quite rare to me. During all this, I've heard from other players as well as Nonat himself says,
fighters are only good at fighting, nothing else, and it's true, I agree with that.
The fighter is underpowered outside of combat. I believe this is because, unlike most classes, fighter is front-loaded for combat, but do remember, this is Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Customization is king. With that +2 proficiency, the fighter could easily drop their combat stat to a 14 and still have the same total bonus as their fellows. Keep it at 16 if you want to retain some of that power, and you will still be able to invest in your other stats. But with the fighter's class feats being so combat focused, a little stat shift won't help, will it? The stat shift helps us invest in our skills. With our class feats being combat focused, we can free up our skill feats for character personality and non-combat utility. So, I would contend the fighter is just as flexible as any other class, you just have to do it with different parts of the character. Parts you might not normally use to achieve that flexibility. All that said, make sure to go watch Nonat1s video. He does great work and he has been an inspiration to me. Thank you for visiting the realm. I've been the Goat King, and come back again next week for more Pathfinder and Starfinder.